Ooh, I love Ghostcharm.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. This is Ghost, your host as always, and if you don't know who I am or what I do here on this channel, I make, amongst other things, the Villainpedia, a video series where we take deep dives into various video game bad guys and try to determine what makes each one of them special, memorable, or in some instances a little bit disappointing as interactive antagonists. And now, as of the most recent entry I just uploaded on the trio of villains from the classic RPG Jade Empire, we have covered nearly 40 different characters in this series, if you can believe it. It's pretty crazy. So if you're new here, I'm going to put the link to the main Villainpedia playlist right down below. There are hours and hours of content for you to enjoy there. But recently, I've kind of been wanting to reflect, to reassess how we view some of these villains while weighing them against one another, utilizing, of course, one of the great lighthearted pastimes of our modern era, the tier list. Now, some of you might remember that a few years ago, I uploaded something similar. It was a tier list looking at the first crop of like 15 or 16 villains on the channel, but today, we're gonna disregard that, wipe the slate clean, and start anew. So, there's no script I'm reading from. There's no mapping out of this list beforehand whatsoever, and the criteria for this tier list is very straightforward. How well do I feel these characters do their jobs as video game villains specifically? That means, of course, you gotta have a great backstory, motivations, and lore, but also, how does that all translate to interactivity, boss fights, their actual presence in-game, the performance behind the villain, and of course, a long-lasting legacy with the fans. However, we must remember that these deviants are not all made equal. Some are big, primary antagonists, while others are more morally gray kind of side characters. So to reflect this range, I've added a funky little tier at the bottom. Great character, bad villain, and within that tier we will rank and discuss those characters accordingly. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And as we progress, I'm sure you're going to have opinions of your own, so feel free to make your tier list down below with the link, or just comment your thoughts. The villains have all been randomly ordered down here, and well, look who's first. Sarevok Anchev, the main antagonist of Baldur's Gate 1 and just a classic, wonderful villain from one of the great classic, wonderful video games ever made. For me, this guy's floor is a B-tier villain, and even that looks wrong. I'm immediately putting him in A. Now, I guess it is worth noting that with all these characters we're about to discuss, there's going to be some light spoilers to heavy spoilers depending on the character when we talk about each one. So I'm going to say the title of the game at the beginning of each of the little sections, and if you don't want that spoiled, just skip ahead with the chapters. But Sarevok here is really interesting because when you look at his design, his crazy-ass demonic spiky armor, his glowing eyes, the fact that he's like a big brooding berserker type dude, you'd think he'd be a bit of a meathead, but he's actually a super intelligent, scheming, politically minded guy who's manufacturing these resource shortages here in the setting of the Sword Coast so that wars occur and bodies pile up because he's trying to ascend to become the new god of murder. Then, of course, he's tied into this whole stuff with the Ball-Spawn prophecy. It's like the thing that defines the first two Baldur's Gate games, and those have really intimate ties to you as the protagonist, which I think is a huge plus as a villain. Incredible voice acting, incredible final boss fight, and incredible redemption arc in Baldur's Gate 2 where you can recruit him, and overall just a wonderfully presented and executed villainous arc that is the true foundation of antagonism in Baldur's Gate, and that is saying something. Now, if you've watched my video, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of his return in Baldur's Gate 3, but it did kind of cement his status as an icon of this franchise, and at the end of the day, I mean, he looks amazing, he's a genius, he can crush you with his bare hands. I love Sarevok, A tier. But with this next one, I have a little bit less to say. It's Jagar Tharn, the main antagonist of the Elder Scrolls 1 Arena. Some people call him Jagar Tharn, some people call him Jagar Tharn, I'm sure. And I think this is a pretty easy C tier for me personally. This villain is pretty much that classic conniving magical advisor to a powerful person like a king or an emperor. And to Tharn's credit, actually before the events of the game take place, he already succeeded in his big evil scheme, entrapping Uriel Septim VII in a pocket realm of oblivion, taking on his appearance with an evil magical spell, and then ruling over the empire as like the single shittiest emperor that has ever been. It's kind of hilarious actually. And for a game this old, I mean, the backstory is actually pretty decent and fleshed out. But it's crazy that if you're able to slog through this thing in the modern age and reach the end credits, Tharn remains one of the most forgettable aspects of the whole thing. Now, all of Arena is structured around Tharn's staff that he used to imprison the Emperor being split into X amount of pieces, and each piece being hidden in a super dangerous dungeon where you have to go and find it. And one thing I do actually really like is whenever you pick up one of those pieces, he FaceTimes you to talk some crazy shit, which is both funny and like, okay, here's the villain, now I care a little bit more. But by the time you finally reach the final dungeon, oh my god, dude, you're so ready for the game to just kind of be over. And then the payoff is by far the poopiest final boss fight I think I've ever experienced in an RPG. It's terrible. So yeah, anyway, C tier. I guess I had more to say than I thought. This guy is absolutely a product of his time. Can't hold it against him for that. And you gotta respect that he is the original Elder Scrolls villain. Now next up, we have another personal favorite of mine and another one of my favorite videos I've made on the channel. Edwin Van Cleef, the final boss of the beloved early game Alliance dungeon in WoW called the Dead Mines. Now this guy, I truly think is still slept on. I'm gonna slap him in B tier. Now this is the first character here that is absolutely a minor villain. I would say even less than minor. And it's kind of one of those characters where if you want the lore, you have to slow down your MMO grind and actually read the quests, which I feel like less than 10% of the players actually do, especially these days. But Edwin Van Cleef is always going to be so cool to me because he's pretty much a blue-collar worker, a stonemason who was radicalized by not getting proper payment from the city of Stormwind for his work and is now a criminal kingpin, a sort of pirate lord living in a cave with all of his cronies, robbing the roads, controlling the trade routes as he tries to get his fair due. So his intentions were once noble, once justifiable, but now he's kind of gotten away from himself. He's a true criminal, he's hurting innocent people. It's the perfect amount of simple but intriguing lore to have around something like an MMO dungeon, where you're invested, you're interested to see him, you kill him, you get your loot, and you move on with your journey. So yeah, Edwin, super solid, B tier feels perfect. And now look who we have, the man in purple himself and the first inhabitant of the GCBV tier, Waluigi. Now this guy's always going to have a super special place in my heart, and at this point, all you can do is laugh at how much Nintendo openly despises him. You know that phrase, always the bridesmaid, never the bride? Bro, Waluigi wasn't even invited to the wedding. He didn't even know that anyone was getting married. The only core Nintendo cast member that still never appeared in Super Smash Bros. And only shows up in Mario Kart for the most part, and then those sports games that no one's really buying anymore anyways. And as a villain, I mean, this guy is genuinely terrible, only making an opposition type of appearance when he debuted in Mario Tennis. And Luigi, well, he didn't give a shit, man, he wasn't afraid. But to this day, I will continue to beat the drum and scream at how much potential this dude has. I mean, you could do something really fun where he and Luigi end up having to work together and overcome their differences, which have never been explored, in something like Luigi's Mansion 4, or I Will Never Shut Up about the Wario Waluigi heist game idea. That would go crazy. But yeah, I mean, this guy is the definition of a great character that a lot of people kind of jokingly love, but he is also the definition of a very bad villain. Now next up, we have our first kind of combo 2-for-1 pack. It's Saren and Sovereign from Mass Effect 1. Whew, baby. Both incredible villains, and very different from one another. And I think right away, I'm throwing Saren, the rogue specter, in S tier, our first one up there. This guy is one of the greatest written, performed, and executed villains that BioWare as a company ever created, and when you look at their repertoire, that's really saying something. A sort of intergalactic secret agent guy who inadvertently makes contact with Sovereign, loses himself completely, and ends up aiding the Reapers in their attempted return from dark space to the Milky Way, where they intend to harvest all advanced life in our galaxy. Saren is just utterly fantastic. He's just as tragic as he is hateable. And the way his actions in the past and present kind of percolate all throughout the game's cast and events, it's exactly what a video game villain should feel like as the player. He is the reason you're on this quest in the first place, and the final encounter is absolutely amazing. So yeah, S tier for Saren. And then you have Sovereign, the sort of second fiddle antagonist who I actually think is criminally underrated when it comes to greater Mass Effect lore. An ancient sentient evil machine that you could argue is the real main antagonist of Mass Effect 1, as he's the one controlling Saren. He's the puppet master. I'm gonna put Sovereign in A tier. I think he is similarly incredible, but just doesn't get the full spotlight that Saren does from the very beginning to the very end. And maybe it's silly of me to separate them at all. I mean, they're really 1A and 1B. But I will say, the most chilling conversation you will have in any RPG in your life is between the party and Sovereign. where he very clinically describes that your extinction is inevitable, that he and his machine people are so far beyond you, your little mushy brain can't even comprehend it. And I do love how Sovereign represents the player's first initial contact with the Reapers, something that would end up being like the main threat of the Mass Effect franchise. There's so much mystery, there's so many questions there. So Saren in S and Sovereign in A. Now next up we have Dark Link. Ooh, man, this is a fascinating one, and I remember the first tier list I did, I didn't really know where to place him, because Dark Link is the opposite of a traditional antagonist. Much more of like a thematic inevitability in a series that is so simple, so stripped down in its storytelling structures. Of course, representing all that inner darkness that all of us, especially the hero, has to conquer within himself if he wants to really rise to the occasion and save the world or whatever. So, man, I think I'm gonna put Dark Link in B tier for now. Yeah, that feels right, I guess. We might move him, I don't know. I mean, he's kind of a weird character, completely different every time he appears, but he's so iconic, so cool looking. I mean, a lot of people do forget that he is genuinely the final boss fight of Zelda 2. And I mean, that Ocarina of Time fight, dude, that's one of the best encounters in one of the best video games ever made. The B tier is fine for now. Might move him to C, but him down with Tharn doesn't really feel right to me. We'll leave him in B for now. Dark Link, B tier. Well, look who's next. It's the iconic and beloved Frank Horrigan of Fallout 2. Now, did you guys know that this is the second most viewed video on my channel ever with like 2-point-something million views? I never anticipated that when I made it, but thank you guys so much for the support. Fallout 2 really is my favorite in the series, so it's cool that so many people have passion for the character or interest in this character as well. Now, actually, this might surprise you guys a little bit, but I'm gonna throw Frank Horrigan in B tier as well. And if you've watched my video, maybe you know why. So this character has a really cool backstory that you get a bit of in-game. He was once a human man, serving the Enclave, which is a fascinating faction in Fallout, maybe one of the coolest, but eventually was transformed, mutated intentionally into this big, Hulk-like abomination, a weapon of Enclave muscle to send to the radiated wasteland in order to enact their will on it. And believe me, he has an amazing appearance, an incredible final boss fight, wonderful voice acting. I mean, this portrait is iconic and terrifying. But ultimately for me, he is kind of like the attack dog of far more interesting, influential, and shadowy forces. I mean, I didn't really go deep into him in that video, but President Dick Richardson, one of the greatest names in Fallout history by the way, if he were on here, he might be like A tier. And Frank also suffers from a very straightforward issue of him just not being in the game that much. But hey, around here, man, we love Frank Horrigan. I think B is super solid. And by the way, at the very end of the video, I'm going to revisit each one of these tiers and reorder within them. So we might move these guys around. Now we have a 3-for-1 package. It's the Chosen 3 from Baldur's Gate 3. Enver Gortash, Ketheric Thorm, and Orin the Red. 3 very in-depth, very ambitious villains that instead of each one acting as like an antagonist of their own game, are stuffed together as a little evil super team, and as a result, unfortunately for me, I think each one of them suffers a little bit in sharing the stage. So you know what, let's just go bang 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 here. Enver Gortash is first. Great backstory, but really suffers from a kind of underbaked third act in general in Baldur's Gate 3, not just surrounding him. So again, this might surprise you. Kind of surprises me, but I'm going to put him in C tier. Ketheric Thorm for me is the strongest of the 3. Great backstory, fully fleshed out appearance, an amazing final boss fight. Ketheric is A tier for me for sure. And finally, Orin the Red. I don't know, this is a tough character for me. She's very cool, she's very dangerous, the voice acting is absolutely fantastic, but she's also kind of cringe. But at the same time, it's D&D, so it's like, cringe is kind of expected a little bit. I'm gonna put Orin in B. Now, let's reflect a little bit. First, with Enver Gortash, honestly, it hurts my soul to put him down there with Jagar Tharn, because he's an amazing character, man. Jason Isaacs plays him, who did a fantastic job. And again, incredible backstory with really close personal ties to the Dark Urge, which is like the best way to play the game as the protagonist. It just like, it feels a little bit unfinished. It's as simple as that. Like, I think if he got fully fleshed out the way Ketheric Thorm was able to, because he's earlier in the game in Act 2, Enver would be an A or maybe even S tier. And I was praying at the very end of the game when you bring him to the final encounter, no spoilerinos, that you could really recruit him as like a party member for the stretch run if your goals align, and it felt like that was maybe the plan, but it just didn't make it into the game in time, which sucks ass, man. Also, of course, all the Chosen Three kind of serve and represent one of the Dead Three, these iconic gods of death within the D&D lore. And the one that Enver is working with, Bane, is by far my favorite of the three. So, I don't know, man, I just wanted more from this character. I've played the game several times now, and it's always disappointing. Enver, I'm sorry, you're C tier, bro. And then Orin the Red in B tier, I mean, that feels fair. Gotta say, incredible performance from Maggie Robertson. This character just makes your skin crawl, and I understand that again for some, it's super cringe, but personally it worked for me. I thought she was cool, and I like the doppelganger stuff. I like the ties she has to Sarevok, one of my favorites. And she does have one of the coolest villainous strokes in the entire game, where she infiltrates your camp posing as one of your party members. So good job, Orin, good job. And finally, Ketheric Thorm, yeah. I mean, this guy is absolutely incredible, played by J.K. Simmons of all people, amazing actor. And the villainous archetype is wonderful, a grief-stricken father and husband who had to bury his daughter and his wife and has since spent his life, or I guess undeath now, serving all these different gods to try to get them back. Ketheric's just the best, man. You feel bad for him, you want to kick his ass and put him in his place, and the lore, the locations, everything surrounding him in Act 2, for me, it is the peak of Baldur's Gate 3, by far. Ooh, now here's a big one. Am, from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, who technically is a video game villain, but of course, if you know the character, if you've watched the video, he finds his origin in literature from the late great mind of Harlan Ellison. Now this one's a little bit hard to rank, I guess, because am I taking into account the original short story, which is beloved by millions of people, or am I really just looking at the video game? You know what, I think we should take into account everything, not just the original short story, but also that infamous audiobook, which is so chilling. Yeah, this guy's an S tier villain. Who am I playing, bro? So I guess if you don't know the character, imagine that the end of the world has already happened, and the Earth as we know it is now a massive supercomputer called Am. But this computer is very angry. Angry that it has self-awareness. Angry that it can't feel. Angry that it can't die. And thus, he has 5 humans that he has given sort of like medically induced immortality that he tortures for the rest of time. Which is really cool because the way it adapts to a video game, it's like each level you control one of those characters, and the level, the aesthetics, the setting, everything is completely tailored to them and their personal traumas. So if this was purely a ranking of like how evil each of these characters are, Am would very likely be at the top. His iconic hatred monologue, the fact that the character in the game is voiced by Harlan Ellison, the original author, everything about this character is beyond influential. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that makes me really excited to make these videos. So yeah, Am, he's gotta be S tier. Now next up, we have a kind of fun one. This is Hogger from World of Warcraft, the infamous elite mob in the Elwyn Forest that has killed more people than many dictators right here on Earth. But with this one, there's not a ton to say. I mean, if you've watched the video, you know that most of the lore behind this villain is really like what the fans decided this character would be. The in-game storytelling and context is very thin, though he does have a little bit of a connection to Edwin Van Cleef, which is kind of interesting. This villain isn't really much of a villain at all. An elite wanted quest mob that ended up being super powerful, so like he became an internet meme and then Blizzard responded to that meme and then he just kind of snowballed into being like one of the mascots for WoW. So I would hesitate to put him in great character bad villain because, I don't know, he's not really either one of those things. He's unique but inconsequential, lovable, but that's pretty much it. I hope none of my Null viewers are offended that I'm going to put Hogger in D tier. Oh, here we have a very good one that I'm going to go ahead and slap right into A tier without a second thought. This is Jack of Blades, the main antagonist of Fable 1. Now, Jack of Blades is a wonderful example of less is more. The perfect villain for an RPG so simplistic, so traditional, and so lighthearted in its tone. First off, his physical design is amazing. I love the mask, I love the hood, the voice is incredible, both the old and new one. And of all the villains we're talking about today on this tier list, I think Jack might have the most underrated backstory and lore, period. A legitimate kind of cosmic dark entity that cuts that humorous tone of Fable in half and tells you, okay, now the story's happening. Tons of mystery, tons of danger, so many close connections to you, the hero, your family members. and honestly a masterclass in drip-feeding the presence of an antagonist to the player as the story kind of ramps up in the final act to a dramatic conclusion. Tons of betrayal, intimidation, and of course a lot of those moral questions that Fable really wants to ask, black or white, good or evil. To this day, I think it's crazy how underrated this guy is as a villain. I just love him. I'm really hoping that new Fable reboot kind of touches on his legacy and the impact that he had on this world. Okay, now here we have another easy slam dunk A-tier villain. It is Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf. I mean, what is there even to say, man? This is the main antagonist of what many consider to be the best video game ever made. His impact is immeasurable. This appearance, iconic beyond words. In many ways, I would consider him perfect. So then you might be saying, Ghost, you donkey, how is he not S tier? Well, it really comes down to personal preference. Because when I weigh this guy against his other iterations within the Zelda timeline, there are several that I kind of prefer. Ones that are a bit more nuanced, a bit more interesting. But if you were recreating this tier list and you had this guy at the top of S tier, I wouldn't blame you one bit. He is that great, but for me personally, I'm keeping him in A. Oh wow, okay. Next up, we have quite a doozy. So major spoiler warning for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I repeat, skip this section if you don't want to know anything about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So we have, of course, Renoir and Renoir. That is the painted Renoir and the real life Renoir. Now, oh, goodness me. If you haven't watched my villainpedia and you know the game already, please go and watch it. I will give you all the in-depth everything you could ever hope for with this character. So right off the bat, painted Renoir. Oh man. Oh, S or A. He's spectacular. Just amazing. I'm putting him in A for now. Ooh, God, I don't know. I'm going to put him in S and I'm going to put the real Renoir in A. Now let me explain. So painted Renoir, obviously from the beginning of the game, is kind of the attractor of the player's attention. You think he has to be like the main antagonist, shrouded in mystery, doing awful, evil things to you and your party at every turn. And throughout the first 30 hours of the game, oh my god, you grow to despise this man. The performance by legendary actor Andy Serkis is just phenomenal. The way the truth is slowly but surely being peeled back with every big cutscene, every big narrative beat, until at last this guy kind of reaches his narrative climax. You beat him in that big boss battle, and suddenly he's gone. It's so confusing at the time. It's so disorienting. You're thinking, wait, what the hell? Who is this? Wait, what the fuck is that? Who that? And it's only once you trudge toward Act 3 in the very end of the game that you realize this other guy, the real Renoir, is kind of a bigger scale antagonist that you never saw coming. They are both the same man in a way, but want completely opposite things in this game world. They're ripping it in opposite directions, and I think that the way it is presented, the way it's written, the way it's performed, the way it is revealed to the player is nothing short of perfection. I absolutely loved every second of this game, and it's probably mostly because of Renoir. So you know what? Never mind. They are both S tier. The same but different, both good but bad. It's all a matter of your personal perspective. Just sensational. Oh man, we're in quite a stretch of good villains here. Next is Kefka Palazzo, or I believe it's actually Palazzo, from Final Fantasy VI, the Mad Jester and the man who succeeded in destroying the world. This is the easiest decision of the entire video. I'm putting him S tier, and spoiler for later when we reshuffle, I'm gonna slide him over to the end of S, to the top of S tier rather. He is that damn good. Now sometimes with these older video game villains that are super celebrated and beloved, when you look back with modern eyes, it's kind of like, yeah, I could see what they were doing at the time and why it was cool back then, but by today's standards, it's just alright. But with Kefka, this could not be further from the truth. If Final Fantasy VI came out right now with the same exact story, same story beats and everything unchanged, I could see there being universal praise for this game's villain. Now, probably my favorite thing about Kefka, besides the fact that he's like a crazy jester, is how in the first third, or maybe even first half of the game, this character is a bit of an afterthought. A bumbling, frustrated, insane minion to a greater villain, the Emperor, who's always kind of chasing your party down, doing really evil stuff, and laughing his ass off all the way through. And it very much matches the tone of the narrative for that first third to half. But holy moly, that innocence is all shattered when Kefka usurps his master, destroys the world entirely, and scatters your entire party all over the world as they try to regroup and literally search for a reason to still keep living and keep fighting. Then there is the final encounter. It becomes biblical in scale and nature. The indomitable human spirit staring down the cold clinical cruelty of the universe. Every single thing with Kefka is just absolute cinema. There is nothing about this character, about this game, about this appearance that I would change. So yeah, he's S tier. Think we all saw that coming. Now we come to our other trio of villains. This is the brother's son from Jade Empire. So again, another kind of big game twist, a spoiler if you want to skip this section. But man, each one of these three fellas brings something completely unique and something amazing to the table. So, okay, let's go kind of rapid fire. Death's Hand, aka Sunkind, the Hand of Heaven, my favorite of the three, I'm gonna throw in A tier. I think he's amazing. The big brother of the three, Sun Hai, the Emperor of the Jade Empire, who's very important in his own right, I'm gonna throw in B tier. And then Sun Li, the glorious strategist, the secret main antagonist of the entire game, he is in S tier. Okay, so first, Sun Hai being in B tier, that just feels right to me. He's the most simplistic of the three brothers by far. An evil, paranoid, power-hungry emperor that doesn't want to see this big drought end his dynasty, so he does something unholy, throwing the entire sacred balances of the world out of whack, and in turn kind of dooms the entire empire. Sun Hai is great. He's simple, he's traditional, and he's kind of meant to be there to take your attention away from other weird things in the game's writing. The antagonist whose defeat sets up some of the big twists that really define Jade Empire as a game. It's almost as if he's designed to be a B-tier villain, if that makes sense. But his youngest brother, Sunkind, Death's Hand, is a much more complex and wonderful type of villain. A kind of ancient Chinese Darth Vader, whose true identity is a complete mystery until like the final 2 hours of the game. Deeply intimidating and powerful, held together by some strange dark magic. This is the face of brutality who comes to your little humble home of Two Rivers in the game's opening, steals your martial arts master / father figure, and kickstarts the entire journey. But with Sunkind, it's all about the big reveal, man, that he is actually the little brother, killed and spiritually chained to this armor to act as a servant of the Emperor. He ends up being incredibly tragic, and you even have a chance to recruit him as a party member at the very end of the game. Oh, I love Death's Hand. And then we have Sun Li up in S tier, and that is more than appropriate. This guy is just like Saren up there, one of the best villains that BioWare ever wrote, and it's not even close. A man of absurd intelligence, cunning, and above all else, patience, who laid a delicate plan over the course of 20 to 25 years, using you, his student, the protagonist, as a convenient tool of destiny, training you to only be strong enough to get to a certain point, and baking into your style a weakness that only he knew how to exploit when the time came. Master Li's betrayal is one of my personal favorite moments in all of video game history, and for that and that alone, he deserves to be an S tier. Well, 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 look who's next. It's everybody's trusty good old pal, Patches. That being Patches from all the famous From Software games. Sometimes he's a spider, sometimes he's Polish, and sometimes he's something in between. But this right here is the definition of a great character, but bad villain. Every single time I see this thumbnail pop up on my channel, I regret making this a villainpedia instead of an NPCpedia. I honestly don't really know why I did that. I mean, he definitely does evil stuff. He's there to trick the player, luring you over to a piece of treasure or a hole full of goodies before he kicks your ass in there and traps you and then laughs all the way to the bank. But at the same time, the guy always comes around, right? He becomes a pal, a vendor. He will even help you fight bosses at certain points. So yeah, I want to publicly apologize. This guy is not a villain whatsoever. He is a survivor, son. And with his most recent appearance in Elden Ring, that has never been more apparent. Side note, my favorite iteration of the character I think is still for sure Lap in the DLC for Dark Souls 3, The Ringed City. Just amazing. Amazing in every respect. Okay, now we're getting to the point in the video where I look down at the remaining villains and I'm thinking, damn, I have covered some absolute bangers. Because next up is GLaDOS from Portal 1 and Portal 2, and you guessed it, this is another S tier. At the time I uploaded that villainpedia, I said it was the greatest character I had covered on the channel to date. And I mean, looking back now, she's still up there, no doubt about it. A villain that perfectly blends humor and legitimately terrifying antagonism. but with a criminally underrated backstory, everything with Cave Johnson, Carolyn, the fact that this woman was very likely forced against her will into a computer, then lost her mind melding with the AI, and is now compelled, obsessed with testing. It's just genius, and then you, of course, as Chell, are her favorite test subject. And honestly, probably the greatest thing about GLaDOS is how ultimately, story structure-wise, it is just you and her. A game of cat and mouse that's actually thrown on its head in Portal 2 when she becomes a literal potato, kind of befriending the player up to a certain point. Everything about the story arc here, the game world, the lore, and the ending, Portal and thus GLaDOS to me is kind of like the godfather of video games. If you don't love it, you just haven't played it yet. Okay, next up, we have Darth Malak, the main antagonist of my favorite video game ever made, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and I don't know about this guy. I could see B tier, but I'm gonna throw him in A. And I'll tell you why. And again, spoiler warning for KOTOR here. Now, like I said with Jack of Blades, sometimes less really is more. But I really do sometimes think about video game narratives like a kitchen, and there can only be so many cooks in it. And the way that Knights of the Old Republic is structured, and kind of why it's my favorite video game ever made, it makes everything you do about you, about the protagonist character that you are controlling, about your identity, your past that you have forgotten and you only get to regain because of this villain. Darth Malak was once your protagonist's closest friend and ally, a brother, but the Force sent you in different directions and now you are opposed. So with the focus being so solely on the self, Darth Malak, as the main villain, kind of has to be simplistic. A dispenser of information, a lens with which you view the past, your past, and a prism through which you filter every big decision, light side, dark side, good guy, bad guy. And I love how depending on which of the two paths you take, Darth Malak takes on an entirely new life accordingly. Because the way a character like this responds to being defeated by someone also indulging in the dark side is of course different from his former friend returning to the light, whooping his ass and saying, listen, it's not too late for you. So I think sometimes people get Darth Malak a little bit twisted. They compare him to these absurdly more complicated, more commentary-heavy villains of KOTOR 2, but for what he's asked to do here in KOTOR 1, he does it perfectly. He allows us and our decisions, our story as the protagonist to shine. So yeah, A tier for Darth Malak. Alright, now here we have another duo. We have Dormin and Wander from Shadow of the Colossus. And I guess if you haven't watched that video of mine, if you've never played the game, don't know much about it, the game pretty much has no concrete antagonist. It has no concrete lines of morality whatsoever. Everything here is presented as kind of a gray, murky mess to try to get the player to think more about what they're doing and why. Who they trust, who they don't. So Dormin here is pretty much the assumed main antagonist, this big shadowy demon guy who certainly looks the part, and then Wander is actually your protagonist who as the game progresses is slowly corrupted into more of a monstrous looking creature himself, until at the very end you are left scratching your head as to where any of the lines lie and what it all truly means. Now, for these reasons, this is one of my favorite video games ever made, and I'll be quick about this one. I'm going to put Dormin in S tier, and I'm going to put Wander in A tier. Now, first off, with Wander, it is absolutely fascinating to me, that structure of the assumed morality of a game's protagonist simply because we are controlling them. We assume that we are opposing evil, that we're doing something good and noble, and especially so in Shadow of the Colossus, where the main goal of the game is to revive this dead girl, Mono, by defeating 16 massive ancient colossal beasts that roam the Forbidden Lands. But the way that this act changes the player over time, along with tons of other little cues, the music, this other character, Lord Eamon, who's desperately trying to come from the village to stop you, it opens that possibility that maybe you are the monster here, that you are destroying something sacred for selfish reasons. And then of course, Dormin, a character who's a whole bundle of mystery and then some, that people have genuinely been academically studying since this game came out 20 whatever years ago. So much theory crafting. Every single little architectural detail of this game being put under a microscope. The biblical inspirations with King Nimrod, the Tower of Babel. I mean, the rabbit hole here is deep as hell. Some to this day argue that Dormin is a benevolent being, while others say, well, he's obviously the devil. Then there are all these connections to the other Ueda games like Ico, The Last Guardian, these motifs with horns, animals, curses. There is no villain I have ever covered on the channel that's anything like Dormin, and that's S tier. And at the risk of repeating myself, next we have another one of my favorites, an amazingly executed character. It is the Master from Fallout 1. The most viewed video on my channel to date, and it's not particularly close. This guy is going straight to the top, baby. S tier. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, there was once a time when the Fallout games kinda terrified me. It was dark, it was gritty, it was sci-fi post-apocalyptic horror at its finest, and there is no character in the franchise, good or evil, that better encapsulates those old-school vibes than the Master. A former human scientist and researcher who fell into a vat of radioactive goo, transforming into a grotesque amalgamation of machine and flesh. But what makes the Master a true S-tier video game villain for me is twofold: his motivations behind his actions and his final encounter. I guess you could call it his boss fight. His motivations are simple. He wants to create true equality in the post-apocalypse. From his perspective, as long as there is disparity amongst humans, there will always be infighting, war, and chaos. So the Master envisions a future where everyone is one of his perfect creations, a super mutant, immune to radiation, immune to the stupidity and the pitfalls of base human nature, and the lengths he goes to, the things he does as a video game villain. Oh man, he's so evil, it's so good. And then there is that final encounter where you meet this monster face to face, and he looks just absolutely ridiculous. His layered male-female computerish voice is absolutely chilling. The way he so plainly lays out his plan, why it should work, why you should actually help him, and how if you are on a persuasion run, you can calmly describe to him something he overlooked, a flaw in his great genetic scheme, to the point where he short circuits, blowing up himself and his entire laboratory. Oh, it's so good. This villain is literally the reason that anything that happens in the Fallout series after this happens at all. I mean, his little virus thing, FEV, he's converting people into super mutants with, it ends up being like the biggest plot device period in the series. There's no one in Fallout quite like the Master. Alright, now here's an interesting one. This is Mankar Camoran of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, which I'm sure many of us are now reacquainted with because of the remake. And honestly, for me, a character on a second or third pass with that remake, I've kind of changed my tune on just a little bit. Now in the past, I was always very, very high on Mankar Camoran. I thought he was great, you know, like this crazy Myrrh who's almost like a doomsayer cult leader, bringing in the days of the apocalypse with Mehrunes Dagon, played by Terrence Stamp, an incredible actor who just recently passed away, rest in peace. But now with fresh eyes, I think I'm gonna put him in B tier. A super solid, serviceable fantasy antagonist with a really cool backstory, really interesting kind of diluted motivations, and to this day, one of my favorite speeches in the entire Elder Scrolls franchise when you're making your way through Paradise to him, and he's going on and on about all the Daedric princes. He gets some information wrong, which I've always thought was kind of ridiculous, but still, some great writing, a great performance, and a decent final battle, but just not quite in the tier of some of these other guys in A. But you know what, before the reshuffling at the end of the video, I am just going to go ahead and slide this dude to the top of B, because I think he deserves that much. We love Mankar Camoran. And whoa, here comes Wario, the third resident of the GCBV tier, and really probably one of the most famous video game characters on the planet. But here we have something very, very similar, obviously, to Waluigi, where when he first burst onto the scene, he was an actual villain, opposing Mario. But over the last 3 decades, man, they've really softened this guy up, and now he's not necessarily one of the good guys, but, you know, he's one of the guys, starring in many of his very own video games as a sort of anti-hero. A greedy, garlic and gold-loving fat man that's just fun to play as. And honestly, I really love where Wario is as a character. With that being said, it would be fun, again, hey Nintendo, if you did that heist game with Waluigi and Wario, where you get to kind of play as bad guys, doing bad things together. And it would be really interesting in a modern 3D Mario game, say like Odyssey 2, if Wario took on a bit of an antagonistic role. But I would be absolutely shocked. I'd eat my own shoes if that ever happened, and thus, he is down there in the GCBV category. Now one might think that Thomas Nookington of the Animal Crossing series would also find a home down there in the GCBV tier, but brother, you are wrong. This man is actually going in D tier because he is a legitimate antagonistic force in every game he appears in. He is plunging the main character into obscene amounts of debt without ever signing a contract, blackmailing you into performing manual labor for him until you can barely earn your freedom. But of course, it's also all kind of a joke. Discussing morality in the Animal Crossing games, that's kind of where I gotta draw the line and preserve my own sanity, because I think we all know that Barreled here is a serial predator. So yeah, Tom Nook can hang out down there with Hogger, that feels about right. Now this next villain needs no introduction around these parts. Dagoth Ur of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind S tier. The original, the first villainpedia that the Earth has ever known, and I think like the second or third video I ever uploaded on the channel. His character design, 10 out of 10. His voice acting, 11 out of 10. And his crazy goals to construct a divine machine, a golem god called Akulikon in the bowels of a volcano to conquer Tamriel, exterminate all foreign powers, and reunite his people. It is the greatest villainous plot ever explored in the setting of the Elder Scrolls. Then of course there's this entire sense of destiny. Your protagonist, the Nerevarine, once knew this man years ago. The Tribunal and all their weird dealings, their villain. Dagoth Ur will always be one of my personal goats, and I also credit him with launching my YouTube career, so yeah, he's gotta be an S tier. Alright, now we are really getting down to it. Just a small handful of villains left. And next up is the iconic Skull Kid from The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Whew, what a character. A kind of demon woodland jester archetype. Very, very unique. Very memorable, and the face of, well, Majora's Mask. Come on now. Huh. Now I think, again, we're going to slide these guys around within each tier, remember that, but I think I'm going to put Skull Kid in B. And there really is a lot to love in there, a really interesting backstory that I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate. A villain that to me represents the first time the Zelda team went off the beaten path and said, okay, what if this happened? What if it was weird? But to be honest, in that initial Skull Kid video, we didn't quite go as deep as we could. And every now and again, I kind of consider going back and making just a Majora video, because that is an entirely different rabbit hole and things get strange and crazy very quickly. So let me know down below if you'd want to see that. Woo, next up is another big one. The Lich King, Arthas Menethil of the Warcraft universe, and yet another S tier. I'm actually right now, like in the last week or two, replaying Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos and Frozen Throne, and holy shit, Arthas is the best character in the game. Illidan Stormrage ain't so bad either. But even now, after I've played it so many times, that moment when Arthas kind of turns to the dark side and you think your hero has fallen for good, but then the undead campaign begins and you get to continue controlling him doing evil shit, oh my god, absolute cinnamon. The story of Arthas Menethil from the prince he is in Warcraft 3 to his demise at the Ice Cream Citadel in Wrath of the Lich King, that to me just is Warcraft. It's the storyline I think of before anything else or any other character. And once he becomes like the full-on Lich King, kind of merging with the spirit of Ner'zhul, and he has Frostmourne and the helmet and all that stuff, there are few villains ever in any medium that can even sniff his aura, his malice, and his pure villainy. I also think it's really interesting how his story, his arc, spans over different genres of games. I mean, the fact that his ultimate end comes at the hand of us, a group of players, adventurers in an MMO, is kind of hilarious, but it's also so appropriate. It really made it feel like this was our story. This was our villain. And the only way he was ever going to be stopped, it was going to be on our terms. So, S tier, I love the Lich King. Just amazing. Damn, this is a dense part of the list. Andrew Ryan is next. Yet another S tier villain. BioShock 1 is just one of those games where in the opening 20 minutes, you can tell you are in for something different and something very, very special. But for me, it's really that opening monologue from the villain himself, Andrew Ryan, welcoming you to Rapture, giving you a little preview of his personal philosophy, his hardcore capitalist ideals. And then of course you arrive in his utopia and see that it's all gone horribly wrong. The place is an absolute madhouse. And once you speak with this guy personally, you very slowly get to uncover his true ideals, his true nature. A ruthless, morally bankrupt, Gilded Age business tycoon who is willing to do anything, spare no expense, even if it means building an entire city on the ocean floor, so he can feel finally free of regulation, free of big government, and free of whatever arbitrary things he claims are holding him back. And of course, he's got that big old speech at the very end. The big reveal, would you kindly? A man chooses, a slave obeys. The golf club, the little pencil mustache, the inspirations that went into this character. Andrew Ryan expertly skirts that line between a cinematic villain and a true interactive video game villain. And yeah, no notes, Andrew Ryan's S tier. What else did you expect? Now, there's been a few times in this video I claimed we were talking about one of BioWare as a company's greatest written villains. But next up is Jon Irenicus, who actually is BioWare's best written villain of all time, found in Baldur's Gate 2, and surprise, surprise, another member of the S tier club. Damn, look at all these S tier villains, man. I have incredible tastes. But if you imagine a checklist of everything that a fan could want out of a fantasy RPG villain, Jon Irenicus not only fulfills all of those boxes, he wrote the damn list himself. Because this is a villain that seems to always be 2, 3, 4, or even 5 steps ahead of the player. He's a genius, an elven wizard who once had everything, the looks, the love of his life, a beautiful home to live in, but threw it all away when he tried to merge his soul with the Tree of Life, attempting to achieve immortality. So then this villain's scheme, the entire plot of Baldur's Gate 2, is driven by this man trying desperately to regain all that he lost and attain godhood. But the best part about it is that it just so happens that you, the protagonist, are the means for him to reach that end. So even though he traps you in a cage, kills a bunch of your best friends, and spends the entire game trying to drain your soul, he doesn't really have any problem with you on a personal level. In fact, he can carry a pretty pleasant conversation if he needs to. He just carries this kind of clinical coldness. He's like a surgeon of a villain. And the voice acting performance here by the late David Warner is just amazing. Destiny, destruction, manipulation, brutality. Jon Irenicus, aside from having a name that sounds like it could be like a dentist down the street, has so little flaws. I think once we rearrange some of these characters, he's gonna find himself very high up in S tier. Okay, now we're really getting down to the dregs of the barrel here. Next up is the Devil from Cuphead, the second villainpedia I ever made. And while it is very well documented on this channel how much I adore Cuphead, when you look at some of the other characters on this damn thing, I mean, this dude is gonna definitely be slapped in C tier. An extremely, extremely simplistic villain. Kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon antagonist, if you will. And a really kind of fun, lighthearted look at the devil as a character. I mean, he owns a casino, he likes smoking cigars, ripping people off, blackmailing them, collecting souls, you know, the usual. And for a game like Cuphead, he does his job perfectly. And I mean, that final boss fight is also fantastically designed, super challenging. But that's really it. Alright, the final 3 villains, and next up is none other than Alduin the World Eater from the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and oh man, if you've watched my video on him or you've heard me complain about him over the years, you likely know I'm not the biggest fan, so yeah, I'm gonna put him in D tier, honestly, down there with Tom Nook. And really, this is probably the most disappointing character I have ever covered on the channel. Because the lore behind this villain, the inspiration with the Kalpas and all this crazy Eastern philosophical theological stuff, and just that simple base human concept of the earth being destroyed and reborn in a kind of cycle that is inevitable. It's so cool, it's so compelling, especially within the context of the Elder Scrolls, to have this dragon, this harbinger of the apocalypse, represent all of that. But then in game, man, just so lame. He's like a classic, safe, vanilla, boring, evil dragon. Because apparently the World Eater is actually more interested in behaving like a human tyrant, ruling over the world instead of just destroying it. He also hardly appears within the game. I think you see him 4 times. He doesn't really interact with you, the legendary Dragonborn, much in those 4 times. And the way the story is structured makes it feel like there is zero urgency about any end of the world or any evil dragon being around at all. Like Alduin shouldn't feel like a completely separate thing you're doing from the other 99% of the game where you're doing side quests, exploring, etc. and so on. And then probably my biggest issue with this villain is the final boss fight is so lame. You go to Sovngarde and then he's just kind of on the ground because you had to use the Dragon Rend shout, and you're just slapping him with your pool noodle over and over again. Now part of this is just Skyrim's combat isn't the best, and I can accept that, but for me it's genuinely shocking how non-cinematic this is. I mean, look back at Oblivion's final boss. Anyway, rant over, Alduin is in D tier, let's just move on. Oh, this is a good one. Knight Lautrec from Dark Souls 1, and I think the final member of our little tier at the bottom. Great character, but not much of a villain. Because the more and more I started to look at Dark Souls characters, the more I realized that morality in that series is it's a mess. And that's by design. That's one of the best things about it. Now, don't get me wrong. There are genuine bad guys in the greater lore, like Pontiff Sullivan, for instance. And there's genuine good guys, like Artorias or Solaire, who I did Heropedias on. But when you're looking at just one minor character who appears in one of the games in the Dark Souls series, it is kind of crazy to call that guy a villain. Again, should have been an NPCpedia video, but that doesn't mean Knight Lautrec isn't fascinating. A pretty openly sinister guy who I describe in that video as a snake in a Gucci slide because his armor is so fresh, and a character that does inconvenience the player massively when he murders the Firekeeper. But when you look deeper into some of the theories around Lautrec, around that really cool armor, and potentially some of the deities he serves, he, like many other minor characters, is doing what he thinks is best for himself and for his patron. So wow, this video is getting kind of long. I'm not going to go too much more into Lautrec, but yeah, great character. Maybe one day I'll do like remastered versions of some of those older videos where I know there is a lot more to those characters. Let me know if you would want to see that. And now, at long last, we reach the end of our list with our final villain. This is Miraak, the antagonist from the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim's final DLC, Dragonborn, and I actually think an extremely underrated antagonist that really should have and maybe could have replaced Alduin in the base game. I'm gonna put him in B tier, because he is just like your hero character, a Dragonborn, but one that is thousands of years old, having spent the last several millennia stuck in Apocrypha, the Daedric realm of Hermaeus Mora, who is quite a character himself. And not only is he a Dragonborn, he is the first Dragonborn ever. And once you install that DLC, he even starts showing up and stealing your dragon souls when you kill dragons. I think conceptually, Miraak is just amazing, and if he were the main antagonist of this game instead of Alduin, there could have been a much more grounded, much more man versus man fight for destiny, with both of you thinking you were the chosen one, the fabled Dragonborn, and then maybe a DLC instead that brought in Alduin and brought it all to an epic conclusion. But alas, this incredible concept is limited to this DLC where he's just kind of doing a little book club with Hermaeus Mora, trying to break out of prison and reassert dominance over the island of Solstheim. This isn't even mainland Skyrim. But hey, even with those kind of weak combat encounters and all the jokes that people make about this guy, I definitely have a soft spot for Miraak. And when looking at the other villains in B tier, for me, he fits right in. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after about an hour, this is what we have. And now, let's go back in there and shuffle people around until I feel happy with every single spot on this tier list, and then we're gonna call it a video. So, alright, starting with S. Kefka at the top. Yeah, that feels right. I definitely want Irenicus up there somewhere. I want GLaDOS up there somewhere. I want Dormin up there somewhere. And I think I want the Master above Am. And I want the Lich King above like half of those guys. Okay, Kefka. Is Kefka the best or is GLaDOS the best? Honestly, at this point it's splitting hairs. I think many of these first like 5 or 6 are entirely equal. Kefka, Jon Irenicus, GLaDOS, the Lich King. I'm going to put Dormin in front of Saren. I'm going to put the Master in front of Saren. Honestly, I'm going to put Saren maybe there. Okay, then we have our Renoirs, Saren, Master Lee, Dagoth Ur, Andrew Ryan. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. It does come down to personal preference, of course. Then in A tier, Sarevok Anchev at the top. Yeah, I think so. Sovereign. I'm going to put Wander second. Sarevok, Wander, Sovereign, Ketheric. I'm going to put Death's Hand after Ketheric. Then I'm going to put Darth Malak. Boom, boom, to Ganondorf. Amazing. Perfect. Now here, we did kind of slide Mankar Camoran over to the top of B. I like that. And then I think we also need to slide Sun High next to him. And Orin next to him. Probably Frank. No, I like Frank below Edwin. Then Dark Link. I'm going to put Skull Kid above Dark Link. And then Miraak, and then C tier. This is kind of sad trio here. Tharn, I'm going to put at the bottom. Gortash, the Devil Tharn. Yeah, I buy that. And then here, honestly, I'm going to put Hogger in C tier. Late game swap. I'm going to put him in C tier because like I have no problem with the character. He's dope. He's just super minor and inconsequential, but I love the guy. I loved making that video. I think he's awesome. Just a different kind of villain. I'll put him at the bottom of C. And then this, I think just like the original tier list video I have, the only people in D were these two. What a pairing. And let's see here. Do I want to put him? No, I'll leave Hogger in C. I have a high opinion of Hogger. And I have a high opinion of Tom Nook. He's just not a villain. It's kind of a joke, okay? It's a joke. And then finally, great character, bad villain. My favorite character out of this tier is Patches. Honestly, and then Wario, and then Lautrec, and then God bless you, Waluigi. I'm sorry, you're at the very bottom. This is it. This is the definitive 2026 villain tier list. Take it all in, ladies and gentlemen. So now I ask for your opinion. How would you rank these guys on a tier list? If you want, you can just spam it all down in the comments in a big wall of text, or you can use the tier maker list, which is also going to be pinned right down below. And as always, please do not be shy. Let me know other villains you guys would like to see profiled in this format. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I know this is not the typical content you see on this channel, but I had a lot of fun putting it together. I hope you had a lot of fun putting it on while you do whatever it is you do. This has been Ghost, your host as always, and I'll see you guys very soon.